Every year in the NBA, we crown a champion. The team that battled through an 82-game season, survived the playoffs, and proved that they were the best of the best. But here's the weird part. Not every team that looked like they would dominate actually won it all. In fact, some of the most stacked, overpowered, can't-lose rosters in NBA history somehow came up short. We're talking MVPs, Hall of Famers, multiple All-Stars all on the same squad, and still no ring. Today we're breaking down the most stacked NBA teams that never won a championship. And trust me, some of these teams will actually shock you. Let's start with the 03-04 Los Angeles Lakers. On paper, this squad looked unstoppable. Shaquille O'Neal, Kobe Bryant, Karl Malone, and Gary Payton. 4 future Hall of Famers on one team. What could possibly go wrong? This roster looked menacing, but when the dust settled, they were taken down by the 6th seed Detroit Pistons, led by the fearless Chauncey Billups, who quietly put together a playoff run averaging 16 points, 5 assists, and 3 rebounds. So what exactly went wrong? How did a so-called super team fall to an underdog Pistons squad? First off, Shaq and Kobe were right in the middle of their infamous feud, and it wasn't just behind closed doors. They were actually calling each other out in the media, throwing jabs about work ethic, shot selection, and leadership. Second, Gary Payton, one of the greatest defensive guards ever, just couldn't keep up with Billups. By this stage of his career, the glove wasn't the same lockdown defender he used to be, and Chauncey took full advantage of that. And then came the final blow. Karl Malone, who was supposed to be the stabilizer of this team, went down with a nasty knee injury during the finals. In the end, this Lakers squad proved that talent alone doesn't guarantee a championship. To win it all, you need chemistry, focus, and everyone pulling in the same direction. And that season, the Lakers had everything but that. Another team that always seemed so close yet could never finish the job was the Utah Jazz of the late 90s. From 1996 through 1998, this roster was stacked with the league's MVP, Karl Malone, the ultimate floor general John Stockton, and the sharpshooter Jeff Hornacek. They reached the NBA Finals not once, but twice in back-to-back years. But there was one problem, or better said, one man. Some called him Black Jesus, others simply called him the GOAT. In 1997, the Jazz had their chance. Game 6 tied at 86, the clock winding down. Utah was one step away from forcing a Game 7, but instead, this happened.
Here's Jordan. Did not have the shot.
Steve Kerr drilled one of the clutchest shots in finals history, sending Karl Malone, the league MVP, and the Utah Jazz back home. But the Jazz weren't done yet. 1 year later in 1998, they were back for revenge. Same roster, same mission. And this time it looked like they might actually pull it off. Fast forward to Game 6, Utah is leading just 18.9 seconds left on the clock. They're incredibly close to forcing a Game 7. But then, Michael Jordan decided to write history again.
Malone is doubled. They swat at it and steal it. Here comes Chicago. 17 seconds. 17 seconds from Game 7 or from championship number 6. Jordan. Open. Chicago with the lead!
The steal, the crossover, the shot. One of the most iconic plays in NBA history. And just like that, the Jazz's dream was over. For the second year in a row. The honest truth is, if Utah had faced any other team against any other player, they probably would have two-peated, and his elite decision-making sealed their fate. While the Utah Jazz couldn't secure a championship because they ran into the GOAT, this next team couldn't win because of the circumstances completely out of their control. The 2021 Brooklyn Nets are the most recent examples of a super team gone wrong, and maybe the most complicated one we've ever seen. In 2020, the world shut down. The coronavirus pandemic forced businesses, schools, and even the NBA into lockdown. But in New York, things went a step further. A vaccine mandate meant that players on New York teams had to be vaccinated to suit up for home games, and that's where the Nets' problems began. Kyrie Irving refused the vaccine, calling it a personal decision, and saying he wanted to stand with the people who feel they don't have a voice. The result? He was kept away from the team to start the season. That left Kevin Durant and James Harden shouldering the weight of a franchise built for 3, until New York finally loosened the vaccine mandate, but only after Kyrie had sat out the entire start of the season. But just as the Nets looked like they were finding their rhythm, disaster struck. In the very first 43 seconds of Game 1 of the Eastern Conference semifinals, James Harden went down with a hamstring injury, the same one that had already sidelined him for a month. Suddenly, Brooklyn was down a major superstar against a Milwaukee Bucks team, led by a hungry Giannis Antetokounmpo, in his prime, and yet the Nets somehow stole the first 2 games. Durant looked unstoppable unstoppable and Kyrie was locked in. For a moment, it looked like Brooklyn might actually survive, but in Game 4, disaster struck again. Kyrie rolled his ankle and never returned to the series. That left Kevin Durant all alone against one of the best defenses in the league, and what he did was nothing short of legendary. He forced a Game 7 with one of the greatest postseason performances in NBA history. Then with the season on the line, Durant hit the shot, a picture-perfect jumper over Giannis to tie the game at 109, but there was just one problem. His foot was on the line. If Durant wore a size smaller shoe, that shot sends Milwaukee home and maybe gives the Nets a clear path to a championship. Instead, it was only just barely enough to force an overtime. And in overtime, the Bucks survived. Milwaukee went on to win the title while Brooklyn's super team was left wondering what could have been. The craziest part, that big three of Durant, Harden, and Kyrie only played 8 regular season games together. 8, that's not a dynasty, that's a missed opportunity. The 2021 Brooklyn Nets were the perfect example of the right players at the wrong time. Similarly to the Brooklyn Nets, there's another team in NBA history that had all the right players, just at the wrong time. The 2011-2012 Oklahoma City Thunder weren't just good. They were stacked with what would become 4 future Hall of Famers: Kevin Durant, Russell Westbrook, James Harden, and Serge Ibaka. On paper, this wasn't just a playoff team, this was a dynasty waiting to happen. To put it into perspective, the Thunder went 47-19 in the shortened regular season. Durant claimed his 3rd straight scoring title. Westbrook averaged 24 points and 5 assists. James Harden won 6th Man of the Year. This was a roster firing on all cylinders. And when the playoffs began, the Thunder wasted no time making a statement. They swept Dirk Nowitzki and the defending champion Dallas Mavericks, the same Mavericks that had taken down LeBron's Miami Heat just 1 year earlier. But OKC wasn't done. In the second round, they faced the Los Angeles Lakers, still featuring Kobe Bryant and Pau Gasol. And in just 5 games, the Thunder steamrolled another Western powerhouse. By the time they reached the Western Conference Finals against the Spurs, OKC had already proven they were more than just young talent. But the Spurs were just a different animal. San Antonio was on a 20-game win streak heading into the series, and after 2 games, the Thunder went down 0-2. And then something flipped. OKC rattled off 4 straight wins to eliminate the Spurs and punch their ticket into the NBA Finals. At this point, let's stop and think about what they just accomplished. Up to the finals, the Thunder had played 15 playoff games. They won 12 of them, and these weren't wins against scrubs. These were wins against Dirk, Kobe, Pau Gasol, and Tony Parker, legit legends of the game. This young Thunder team was that good. But here's the crazy part, even after running through the West like that, they still weren't the favorites to win it all, because waiting for them in the finals was LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, and Chris Bosh, the Miami Heat's big 3. OKC actually stole Game 1 behind Durant's 36 points, and it felt like the beginning of something historic, but instead it was the beginning to the end. Miami adjusted, LeBron elevated his game to another level, and the Heat rattled off 4 straight wins to capture the championship, LeBron's first ever ring. For OKC, it was a devastating end. This was a team that felt destined to win multiple titles, but the truth is they were just too young, not quite at their peak yet. And as we all know, this core never got another chance. Harden was traded the very next season. Looking back, the 2012 Thunder will always feel like one of the greatest what-ifs in NBA history, a team that had everything you want for a dynasty, just a few years too soon. And that's the crazy thing about the NBA. Talent doesn't always equal rings. Sometimes it's chemistry, sometimes it's timing, and sometimes it's just running into a legend at the wrong moment. And yet they will always be remembered as what could have been. If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and let me know in the comments which stacked team do you think was the biggest missed opportunity in NBA history. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.